Good evening. My name is Taslim Ahmed. This is the second part of our series. Now, in this series, my objective is really to explain to you what our manifesto is about, meaning the items within our manifesto that it talks about what the problems we believe that are facing the country, the major problems. It talks about, in some cases, why these problems exist, and then talks about our own approach that we want to bring to solving these problems. Now, in terms of inflation, I guess first I'd like to mention what these major challenges are. Of course, it is inflation, security, rule of law, the lack of jobs, the poor salaries, the economy, the poor business environment, the lack of infrastructure, which is electricity, roads, and even our ports, the lack of education, our poor policy towards the environment, which is affecting our brothers and sisters in the Niger Delta, which is affecting our brothers and sisters in the Northeast due to desertification, which is having issues with their farms. These are all issues that we're not even worried about now, that are only going to come up 10, 15, 20 years from now, when we are now at our own prime. We, the youth of today, are now the elders of tomorrow. I mean, not even the elders. Most of us would be in our 40s and 50s and 60s, you know? And of course, one of the biggest albatrosses of this country, which is corruption. Now, in terms of inflation, I'm sure most people don't even understand why inflation happens, what causes inflation. Now, it's interesting to note that just between last year and this year, between June and July, between June 2021 and June 2022, the prices of most goods, most of the basic goods, have more than doubled. That is in 1 year. That is simply unbelievable. Of course, not everything, it's not all the fault of the government, but the government's reaction to the global environment has been very, very worrying. Now, what really causes this inflation? One of the key things, the currency is one of the key determinants of how much inflation exists. How? Well, most of the things we use in Nigeria, from the cars to the furniture to the electrical equipment, that is the TVs, the manufacturing equipment we use to farm or to create whatever products we are creating, the clothes we wear, all of these things, even the raw materials for most of our food, they are all imported. And we use the dollar to import these things. So what happens is, as a country, when the value of our naira is low, we are now going to have to spend much more naira to get the same number of goods, which immediately, so if it costs $10 to import, let's say a bag of rice, and now the naira is trading at 200 naira to the dollar, what that means is you are paying 2,000 naira for a bag of rice. Now, if the naira then falls from 200 naira to 400 naira, that means for that same bag of rice that is still $10, we are now going to pay 4,000 naira for the same bag of rice, which means that the cost has already doubled. Even though the real cost has not changed, the fall in the naira has caused the cost of that thing to now increase. That's one of the first main factors that is causing inflation in Nigeria. So the government, unfortunately, has taken control of the central bank, which, you know, is a complex thing, which I don't really think is part of the scope of this discussion. But because they've taken control, now their policies towards maintaining the naira have been very poor. What are the things that the government is supposed to do? Well, first of all, it's not the job of the government per se, it is the job of the central bank. But again, the central government has hijacked that role from the central bank. So what was supposed to happen is, right now, the price of oil is very high. Nigeria is a large importer of oil. What makes the currency to go up or down, basically in Nigeria, has always been the price of oil, because oil is the only thing, almost the only thing that we actually sell abroad, that we export. It's more than 80% of what we actually sell to other countries. Now, it happens that at the end of the day, how much you sell, if you sell $40 billion, or if you sell $1 worth of things to the world, then you are supposed to collect, in theory, $1 worth of things from the world. If what you collect is more than what you sold, then your currency will go down. This is how it happens. So if you happen to sell $100 worth of oil, that means you should, in theory, you should only import $100 worth of goods. You should only import $100 worth of all the cars you are going to use, all the petrol you use, all the diesel. If you import more than $100, the value of your currency will go down. This is how the currency gets misbalanced. Now, how does the government actually influence these things? Well, it's really quite complicated to explain, but I guess I'm going to be simplifying a lot in this series. So what the government's policies are supposed to be they're supposed to find ways to reduce the amount of things that we have to import so that it balances with the amount of things that we are exporting. But right now, even the amount of things we are exporting have gone down, despite the fact that the thing we are selling, the price of the thing we are selling has gone up. Why? We used to sell more than 2 million barrels of oil per day only a few years ago. Now we are selling just over 1 million barrels per day. That's half of the oil we are selling gone, completely disappeared. Now that's due to all the poor policies of the government. That's due to the insecurity in the Niger Delta. That's due to so many things, some of which are out of the control of the government. But when you elect a government, you expect them to go above and beyond to ensure your security, your safety. If they cannot do it, they are supposed to resign and leave the seat for people who can actually do it. Now, when you lose half, just imagine losing half of your salary. Imagine how that is going to affect your livelihood, how it's going to affect your life. For a country, it is so much worse because it cascades. It leads to many other things happening. Now, we were selling about 2 million barrels of oil per day before at about $60 per barrel. Now, we are selling only 1 million barrels per day, and the price of oil is now about $100. So you can see it doesn't really balance at the end of the day. So we have a lot of losses now coming in. But to make the problem worse, a lot worse, what makes it so much worse is that our biggest import, even though the highest thing we are selling, 80% of what we are selling is oil, about the highest thing we are now buying, we are now importing, is petroleum products, diesel, petrol, aviation fuel. This is the highest thing we import. In some cases, it goes as high as 30% of our imports, basically cancelling almost most of the benefits of actually selling that oil. So this is a very terrible situation where 30% of your imports goes to re-importing something. Now, in Nigeria, we use about 450,000 barrels of oil per day. That is what we use about in the country. All the petrol we use, all the diesel, all the aviation fuel, when you process it, the amount of goods you get, the amount of the petrol, diesel you get from that crude oil is you need about 400,000 barrels per day. So, and we are selling 1 million barrels per day now, about. So the difference is now small because it costs more when you are buying petrol and diesel. Of course, if you are selling tomato, now, if you are selling tomato for 1,000 naira, tomato paste is going to cost more because you've processed that tomato paste, you've processed it now, so it's worth more. So it's going to cost, if it's only going to cost you 1,000 naira to buy tomato, to buy the same tomato paste quantity might cost you 2,000 naira. So this is what is happening now. So that 450,000 barrels at the end of the day is probably worth, when you refine it, is probably worth almost that 1 million barrels per day. So it's almost cancelling each other out now. It's basically cancelling each other out. Now, what was the government supposed to have done about these things? And this is only one case. The government, in this case, there are many things the government has in its arsenal to do. The central bank has only one vehicle, which is mostly to raise interest rates. Most other governments have raised interest rates significantly.